Good morning, beautiful people, and welcome to my channel. My name is Charisse, if this is your first time here. So today, I wanted to talk a little bit on where your focus goes and what grows from that. I talked a little bit about this on one of my last videos about separating from society and how that was helping me deepen my spiritual practice and such. If you'd like to watch that, I will put a link below in the description. But I really wanted to extend a little bit on that. So, where you place your focus, there are actually a lot of studies out there on this with plants actually, and how plants will actually grow to be healthier and happier when you are basically pouring love into them. And I noticed this at my dad's house. They have these pine trees. They go all the way around the property. And at the very front, there is a very, very tall, very, very green pine tree. And with the front row of trees, the second tallest tree is the one that when you step outside of the front door, it is the first tree that you look at. And I've been looking at these trees and I'm like, I think that is a beautiful representation of where energy goes. It grows because literally these trees that are the focal points of attention are growing stronger, more vibrant, and taller than all the other trees, and they're the ones that you see when you are first coming and going, so they are receiving the most amount of attention. I think that is a perfect example of that. Some people might argue that, you know what, it's just like probably their genetics, and you know what, that might have a big aspect to do with it, but I honestly do think that a lot of times, where you put positive focus, or even just focus in general, that is where whatever it is going to grow the most. So, now I specifically wanted to talk about focus when it has to do with thoughts, especially when you are in community with others. So, I personally believe that thoughts are not owned by us. I do not think that thoughts are a part of us, but I do think that thoughts can define our life. I actually believe that thoughts are basically like other little entities outside of us that are in their own type of way feeding off of our attention. And these are spirits and entities that are basically little thought patterns, or dropping little thought patterns that we choose to feed by giving our attention and focus to those things. And these can be positive or negative types of entities. You can have very positive thought patterns that you are giving your attention to, or you could have very negative thought patterns that you are giving your attention to. And especially within communities, I think that one good way to observe this is, for instance, families. When you grow up in a family, you learn certain thought patterns. And I believe that it is because that spirit or entity is feeding off the whole community, the whole family, because they all work together. We're all very interconnected, especially when we are in a living environment with somebody. And I've found that the older I get, the more energetically sensitive as well as energetically aware I become. I notice how these thought patterns and entities can be through long distance as well when you communicate, or even just connect with somebody by thinking about them. You are connecting with all as well, oftentimes, the different energies, entities, and spirits that are connected to them, as well as they are connecting to the ones that are connected to yourself. Alright, this is off to a great start. I just wanted to interject real fast and say that at some point I would also like to create a video on the unconscious and its effect and impact on our thoughts and our lives, our objectives, motives, and feelings. This is much more of a psychological approach, and I follow the teachings of Carl Jung. This is a much more, well, I guess they're both extensive topics, but this is one that I think that I need to educate myself on a little bit further, and it is a kind of a belief that makes you take a little bit more responsibility, at the same time acknowledging that these unconscious habits and such do not actually stem from yourself. Generally, they can be genetic, passed down generational, or they can be taught to you in childhood based on your environment. But I think that would also be a wonderful video to show you guys. It gives a little bit of a different belief around what I'm talking about on this, more of a psychological approach. But like I said, I would like to educate myself a little bit further. But if you would like to learn a little bit more about that, I will put a link below in the description about confronting the subconscious. I found it to be a really, really, really awesome video on this, so check that out if you'd like to. So the point I kind of wanted to make with focus when it has to do with communities and connecting with other people, you might receive certain thoughts that you're like, oh, this person thinks of me like that. And I think that one really big thing that transformed my life is taking away the idea and the concept that this person is thinking that of you. No. They are giving their attention perhaps to an entity that is feeding them certain thoughts and ideas. But that is not something that is actually directly stemming from them. And I think that if, say, somebody is thinking a negative thought and you feel that, even if it's not like actual hearing it in your head, there are a lot of people that are clairaudient like myself, where you might actually hear these thoughts in your head, and sometimes you might just feel it. It might just be a feeling, which I am not really sure. I don't remember what that one's called at the moment. But say you feel this negative thought or vibe off of somebody else. When you take your awareness back to being like, rather than being like, ugh, yeah, that person thinks that of me, well, this is what I think of them, or getting like super touchy or triggered by it, rather taking your attention back and being like, that's not coming from them. That is something outside of them, and perhaps it is something outside of yourself, because at this point you are also connecting with whatever that entity or spirit is. And when you give your focus and attention to that, you are going to perpetuate that thought and that pattern, and you are going to feed that spirit or entity. And that is going to continue growing the more attention that you are giving to that negative thought pattern or belief, whether you think it is coming from somebody else or from yourself. I think this is a very great way to take your power back, is by realizing that we are all very divine and very beautiful, and we came into this world as light. And yes, I do think that there are a lot of evil people in this world that have basically been taken over by evil entities, but I do not believe that they came into this world evil. That is a very unfortunate happening, but I am not gonna really talk much on that today. But when you realize that you don't have to give your attention to those negative thoughts, beliefs, and patterns, it takes your power back, and it takes your focus back, so you are not perpetuating that belief and that pattern. And I find this especially beautiful and important when you are connecting with other people, and not just when you're, in your own space, and this is your own dark clouds that, well, I guess you don't have to own that. When you are in connection with somebody else, and say you are feeling this negative flow between you guys and these negative thoughts between you, say you feel like, or you know that they're thinking towards you like you are just lazy, for instance. That's a good one to start with. They just are thinking that you're lazy. And you're thinking about that, and you're focusing on how much they think that you're lazy, and you just know that they think that you're lazy, and it is just starting to frustrate you because you know that you're not lazy. You're just tired. And this is a great example of myself, because I do think that a lot of people think that I'm lazy because anyway, I'm not going to really go into that today, but say this is the thought pattern that you are getting off of, or between you and somebody else. The more that you focus and give energy to that thought, that that person thinks that you are lazy, the more that you are actually perpetuating it and allowing that concept between you to grow. I also think that doing this, giving your attention to that, there are times when that is actually a fear that is rising up around your own aura and space, perhaps from trauma, perhaps from generational trauma. Perhaps this is basically a generational entity that has been feeding off of your lineage for a very long time, a thought pattern and a belief that you are perhaps trying to fight and overcome. Imagine that that thought is actually stemming from your own auric field, from your own energy body, from it's feeding off of you, and it originated from feeding off of you. And when you are perpetuating the belief that somebody else thinks a certain way about you, you are going to allow those thoughts and those beliefs to then be planted within their own energy body, auric field, and mind, basically. You are directing that entity to feed off of them now. So now they're thinking to themselves, perhaps out of nowhere, perhaps they never thought this, and all of a sudden they just start thinking, wow, he's just so lazy. And now they're thinking that too. And I do not think that this is always the case. Oftentimes, yes, that is something that is already perhaps feeding off of them, or perhaps it's something that, found weak spots in this relationship and in this connection that you two share. Perhaps there's an entity that, just came upon you and is like, I notice a weakness here, so I'm going to feed off of their attention and off of their weakness, basically, off of their trauma. And now you are both giving your attention to this, and you are feeding it, and it is growing, and it is growing, and it often creates discord within relationships, because at this point both of you are actively feeding this entity and causing a disruption within your connection. Wow. That's wild to think about, isn't that? Also, you guys, I find that oftentimes when you pull your energy back from certain thought patterns around your beliefs of what other people are thinking of you, because there is an entity of misunderstanding basically feeding off of your connection with that person, often that is the energy that you're picking up on, is that misunderstanding between you and another person. And that is often interpreted in its own way, in its own individual way, by each person. So while you might be sitting there thinking that that other person thinks something very specific about you, they could actually be sitting there thinking something completely different, and oftentimes more oriented towards what you are thinking of them. So take your power back from that thought pattern, because oftentimes that little thought is just a voice of misunderstanding, and it's speaking into both your ears, its own ideas, and its own beliefs that also often stem. I think that like that entity of misunderstanding is feeding off of the connection and is feeding off of weaknesses within both of you, and your weaknesses might actually be very different. So your interpretation of what the misunderstanding is in between you two might be completely different. You could be there thinking, they just think I'm lazy. And they could be over there being like, this person just doesn't like the way that I do things. Completely different thoughts could be going through your minds, stemming and feeding off of your own individual insecurities that often stem from some type of childhood trauma, or just in general from your childhood experience or experience that you've had in the past with somebody. And everybody lives different lives, so we have different experiences and such, so we all have different stories that are going on inside of us and outside of us. So just something to pay a little bit of attention to is, you know what, people might definitely be thinking about you, but what if they're thinking about you in a completely different way than you think? And when you think of it like that, it makes you realize that you are much more in control of what is happening in your life than you think. And I genuinely believe, and I do not think that this is always the case, because other people have a choice. I know some people on my channel do not believe in free will. I have heard that belief before, but I don't know what I really think of it. I think some of what I'm saying kind of flows with that idea, but when you take your power back from that thought pattern and from that entity and spirit that is feeding off of your attention with that negative belief and thought, when you take your power back from it, and I found with myself, and perhaps you will find more ways to deal with this, but for myself, I have found that there are 2 ways to deal with this. I find that the number one most powerful way for myself to deal with this is by refocusing and internalizing, basically. Like choosing to meditate. I will turn on some good meditation music, and I realize not everybody really flows with this form of meditation. Perhaps you could do an active meditation where you are basically taking your thoughts, your energy, you're taking your energy back completely. You're taking your focus back completely. And you are deciding, I am not going to give attention to this thought anymore. You basically treat that thought like it is somebody who is trying to get all up in your face, and you're like, nope, I'm not gonna fight you. I'm choosing peace. I'm choosing to keep my peace. I'm not going to fight you. I am going to literally ignore you and act like you don't exist. And I realize that there might be some cases where this is not healthy for perhaps, okay, but for the reason that I am using this is what helps me, guys, and it might not work for everybody, so please only take what resonates. But when you take your attention back and you refocus it onto something positive, or this first method would be towards a more meditative form of refocus and just focusing on light energy within you and going into some form of deep meditation. It is pulling back your energy completely from that. And if this is something that stemmed from more from the other person's energy field, it now is cutting off that connection, so that entity is no longer feeding off of both of you. You are no longer both giving it the attention. And oftentimes I find that this allows the other person, it kind of like weakens the power of the entity. And especially if they are still, that person is still kind of trying to connect with you and the entity is still trying to connect with you, the less power you are giving to that thought and to that entity and to that spirit, the weaker it becomes, and the easier it actually often becomes for that other person to process why that is affecting them so strongly, and as well to be able to take their own power back from that. And I do not think that that will always be the case, that the person is going to take their power back from that thought pattern or from that entity. Sometimes it can be very quickly, sometimes it might take them more time, and sometimes they might decide that they want to continue giving their power to that thought and that entity. And if that's the case, during those times, I would say each person can choose how they are going to choose to move forward in that relationship. But yeah, the second way I would say is to transform, is to create a more positive thought pattern. And I think that when you do this, it's kind of like alchemy, I guess. I guess it totally is alchemy, where you are seeing something that seems negative and you're like, you know what, I don't want to give my attention to that, so I would rather give my attention to something positive. So when you allow yourself to be like, you know what, no, I'm not going to sit here and think that this person thinks that I'm lazy, or think that I'm lazy. I'm going to be like, I am productive and I am motivated, but I am going to allow myself to rest right now and listen to my body. Which would have a little bit to do with like that kind of topic. It's kind of giving like the opposite, giving your attention to the opposite type of entity. At the same time, you could also just refocus into something completely different, like I am loved and I am accepted, which I guess is not completely, it is completely different, but also kind of flows with an opposing aspect of that energy. So you could create a positive affirmation to, in a way, kind of combat it, but it's not really combating. I think it's more transforming and choosing to give your attention to something that is going to create a more positive atmosphere for yourself as well as the other person. So, I think that this is something that can also be done when you are feeling under some form of spiritual attack, when you are not just connecting with somebody else, when it's not just about a relationship with somebody else and the vibes between you and another. I personally find that meditation is extraordinarily powerful. I honestly, I will try to never claim that there is something that is for absolutely everybody, because everybody is different and everybody thinks and creates and loves differently. So finding something to positively give your attention to, something positive to give your attention to, something that creates deeper feelings of love and peace inside of you. And this might be different for everybody, but like I've said, for me, meditation is the most powerful tool to refocusing my energy. And yeah, guys, so that's my little bit for you today. There is so many little like off topics I could go with this, because I am also like a great encourager of like feeling your feelings, and I am a deeply feeling person, and sometimes those feelings that you're experiencing and giving your energy to, or that are flowing through your energy body, might feel and seem negative. And I think that I do not think that most feelings are actually negative. I think that they are just a part of the human experience. And the more that, and this might not apply to everybody, but for me, and possibly for other very highly sensitive, emotional people, the sooner and the more I allow myself to just feel something, just wash it out of my body, cleanse it, let it flow through me and right out, the quicker it's gone for me. And I think that some people can stay very attached to certain feelings and emotions and linger in that and not want to leave it because it can become addictive, or, like I said, it can be something that we are allowing to basically eat off of us. It's like a parasite. It can become a parasite, and I think that there are energetic and spiritual parasites, and like demons, for instance, that can find your weaknesses and find things that we might energetically be attached to or addicted to, such as feelings, thought patterns, and beliefs. I think in the energetic and spiritual supernatural world, there is a lot going on, and there's a lot of spirits that are very aware of what is going on within us. And while there are, yes, spirit guides and energies and entities that are here to help us and guide us, just as much as there are ones who are trying to fill our cup and perpetuate beauty and love in our life, there are entities and spirits that are going to be trying to leech off of you and feed off of you. And I do genuinely believe that in that energetic and spiritual world, they can see in a very different way than we see in this 3D reality. So they can see your weaknesses, and when they can see your weaknesses, they can feed off of that more easily. And this is not something to be afraid of, guys, but it is something that I think more people should be like, wow, you mean I can take my power back from that? Hell yeah, you can. Hell yeah, you can. Just the same as we have weaknesses, we have strengths. And we are very, very, very powerful. And there is a lot of love and light and spirit. Divine spirit and love is always trying to guide us into deeper love and support us and bless us and fill us. And it is our choice whether we are going to spend most of our attention and focus feeding the darkness or feeding the light. And I do not think that this necessarily just also applies to people going through extreme grief. Like I said, there's a lot of things that just need to be felt, emotions and feelings we go through, experiences in life and loss, and it can be very difficult to process, and each of us takes our own time to process different things. But I guess the topic of this video is a little bit more on specific thoughts, patterns, and beliefs, and how our attention is feeding certain things in our life around that specifically. If you are going through any form of grief, my heart goes out to you, and I hope that you have compassion with yourself and you treat yourself with kindness and patience during that period. Grief is probably, I've personally found, one of the most difficult emotions to process and move through, and it tends to be, I think, more of a dense energy to move through, which is why I think it takes some people a really long time to move through that. And if it does take you a longer period of time, I just want you to know that there is nothing wrong with you for that. But I do hope that you find things in your life that are beautiful. I hope that you go outside and take a little walk through nature, the classic, take a walk for your mental health. I hope that you go somewhere that has beautiful flowers, or that you go to see the ocean or forest or the river, or if there's a creek. I hope that you go out in nature and see the beauty. Even if you go out and are still feeling sad and in this period of darkness, it's okay. It's okay to go through periods of darkness, guys. And I hope with my whole heart that if there isn't already, that people come into your life that love you, even when you're in the darkness. And this applies to anybody who might be wrapped up and feeding darker thoughts and entities and parasites and such. There's a lot going on, and especially when it is generational type parasites and energies that have been feeding off of your family for generation after generation, it can often be really hard to break free from that, and oftentimes you have to do it over and over and over again. And I genuinely hope for anybody, no matter what you're going through, whether it's a period of darkness and grieving, or you're struggling with negative thought patterns or difficulties in your relationships with others, or feeling accepted or loved, or whatever it is, that the universe, that God leads people into your life who are compassionate, kind, and patient with you through whatever phase you are at in life. You deserve love. You deserve love, absolutely. And if you're struggling to see that there are people in your life that are like that, or perhaps there aren't people in your life that are like that right now, I hope that you choose to be that for somebody else. Encourage that cycle. Encourage that relational pattern in other people's lives, because this is another thing where if you are choosing to create in a certain type of energy of love and patience and gentleness, or whatever more positive type of energy, maybe it's encouragement. When you are choosing to create in that and giving your focus through action, action is also one way that we create focus and give our attention to things. I think that I am perhaps a person based more within stillness and a slow moving energy. I think that there are a lot of people who are much more action and go oriented. Perhaps this is the way that you take your power back from negative entities and energies and thought patterns, is through action. Perhaps your way of refocusing and giving your attention to more positive energies and entities is through action, is through showing people that they are loved, is through showing yourself through the way that you take care of yourself that you are loved, is by treating yourself and other people with gentleness and patience, or whatever else it might be, by speaking kindly to others, by speaking kindly to yourself. Your actions give attention and allow these negative or positive entities to feed off of you just as much as where your thoughts are directed, where your words are directed, which words could be a more action-oriented type of energy. So guys, if you are struggling to see the positive in your life, I hope that you choose to create some. I hope that you choose to create some. If you are somebody who is going through any form of deep grief, and people in your life are perhaps struggling with you grieving, or struggling with you going through that period of darkness, or facing that flow of negative thoughts and these things that are trying to feed off of you and steal your energy and attention, I hope that you take that experience and that desire for more from your relationships and choose to give it and choose to pour it into your relationships. And when you meet somebody who is going through grief, I hope that you take all of that of how you wished somebody else had treated you or thought towards you and direct it towards them. That is one of the most beautiful gifts I think that people can give to the world, as well as others, whether it's somebody that you meet once or somebody you are in a long-term and lasting relationship with, is treating others the way that you wish that you had been treated and that you wish you are treated. Giving that love and compassion that you needed to somebody else that needs it. Alright, you guys, this is a little bit longer of a video. But I hope that you enjoyed it, and I hope that it reached anybody who can relate to it or use what I said in a positive and uplifting or educational way. Please do like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video, and I hope that I see you all next time. Thanks for being here. I hope that you have an absolutely amazing and beautiful day. And I hope that you guys feel uplifted after this, because I feel uplifted just after creating it, after having a really rough night yesterday. It was the first day of my period, and I get very emotional and sad, and I'm just purging so much, and today just feels so much more brilliant, and yep, that's gonna be it. I love you guys, and I believe in you. Okay, bye.